Hello everyone, I am Tacet, and today I'm going to be going over the Gems of War, the Prickly Pear event, in which the Bahir, as well as a new event key legend, have been added to the game. Before we do, of course, we did have version 5.4 of Gems of War last week, but I haven't really covered a separate video on it, just because not too much really happened with it, even though we covered it on stream. However, as far as a quick rundown on it, the main most noteworthy thing, as far as anything that affects it now, is the new lycanthropy effect. Basically, this is on things like Essence of Evil, Magnus, and pretty much anything that could do a random stats effects that has a 15% chance to transform the infected enemy into a beast. This is mostly going to be good for disorienting a team if you're looking for something like a death mark, but you want it to be slightly more consistent. Aside from that, it's not going to be too useful just because you do still have to kill the beast, and in some cases, like when you use Essence of Evil, it'll actually be beneficial for the enemy if they end up being transformed because they won't have all the stats effects on them. So it's a very weird mechanic, definitely quite a bit of a nerf to Essence of Evil. They also did quite a bit of technical changes behind the scenes for the game, which will probably affect some future updates. However, it mostly just made this download a lot bigger. Aside from that, we did get 2 new achievements, getting power level 15 for 5 kingdoms, as well as getting 30 or 300 of the social thingies, like the titles, the emojis, and stuff like that. And that was pretty much it, aside from a few bug fixes. The most noteworthy bug fix being that they finally fixed being able to copy paste into events. So some events wouldn't let you properly copy paste all the teams we have in the description below, but now that should be able to work. Before it was kind of a little finicky on if it was or was not working for some events, but now it should be working as intended, as normal. Anyways, let's start going over the 2 new troops that came out for Drifting Sands. Drifting Sands also get a permanent +1 armor today if you can get it to 20 stars. It can actually reach 21, but at 20 you get the additional armor. As far as this troop, it is really cool troop art. Unfortunately, really bad. Comes with a lot of blue-purple though, so if you need to stock up on the trait stone, great time to do so because they're only 200 glory each instead of 300 glory each. As far as the troop, it deals damage to an enemy. If the enemy is a monster, it will entangle them, and if it is a dragon, it will deal triple damage. The dragons are extremely not meta right now, so this is almost never going to be used, just because dragons are pretty much not used at all. Maybe once a 50% dragon star comes into the game, that will slightly change, but even then, they're probably not going to become meta, just because of Submerge countering a good majority of dragons. Actually, surprise, this thing does not count as a dragon. And aside from that, it just has that useless bonding trait and has a double 2 times damage, some to dragons and some to monsters, which has nearly no overlap whatsoever, so very rarely is he ever going to be hitting 4 times skull damage there. Aside from that, we did end up getting a new event key troop as well. So, of course, event keys this week is for Drifting Sands. As far as what is available on Drifting Sands, if we click over to Drifting Sands and then click Show All, we'll be able to see most of the stuff that is available. The 4 that are not available here are the 4 troops like Beatrix, which are specifically from the Deep Hive, which are really great to go get. However, Beatrix is one of the best troops in the game. But keep in mind that this is specifically from the Deep Hive. You will not be able to get it from the event key drop table. But aside from that, there's a Dust Devil here, though that's probably something that's low enough rarity that you would already be able to get. However, there's also the new troop, which is probably the main reason why you would even go and open event keys this week, and it is for the Obregonia. So this is a new troop that got added today that is only in the event key drop table for this week, and it'll be in the drop table after about a month or so, though it's advised getting it now, as it will be much easier to get it now through some event keys. But he's a 16 mana cost, green, red. He does count as an elemental, so even though dragons don't have half mana start yet, he can half mana start off an elemental, though you probably won't be using him because all he does is deal damage to all enemies and then inflicts bleed onto them. I'm not sure why they absolutely love giving physical damage bleed, because obviously if you want to use a bleed mechanic team, you're going to want to use true damage, yet almost every single option they keep adding for bleed keeps having physical damage or true damage. I'm not sure why they keep wanting to do that, but it is making it so bleed builds can't really be used for the most part. There's a few instances where it can, like the Queen of Sin thing and stuff like that, but overall, there are not that many instances where you can end up getting away with bleed, just because they keep combining physical with true damage. But as far as his final trait, he does get to bleed an enemy whenever matching green gems. Overall, it's not really something you're really going to bother using. It does have a little bit of synergy, oddly enough, with Beatrix. However, it's not enough synergy that you'd really justify ever really using this onto your team. It's a troop you'd get just to get some stars on the place, but it's a troop you'll most likely not really use. It is the first dragon, I do believe, that does have a bleed mechanic, so I guess maybe for that, it kind of has a little bit of usage, but we'll have to see what happens when dragons end up getting 50% on if anything will actually be useful, and I don't really foresee it being that useful. But yeah, that's pretty much the rundown. You'd pretty much just run event keys for that, because most other things from this kingdom are pretty bad, with the exception of Beatrix. However, Beatrix you don't open in event keys. You open them in portals in the underworld if you want to go and end up getting that troop. Aside from that, we do have a 10% bonus to Drifting Sands, as well as a 10% bonus to all monsters. This is somewhat relevant because this makes up about half the kingdom, so a good majority of the kingdom will have 20%, which is pretty useful for the event this week, because that is the restriction. Also, if you want to use this useless troop, he does give additional 400 gold if you go and farm him in Explore. So if you want to get a little bit of extra Explore gold, you can end up doing it that way. So as far as the World Lore event, we do luckily have the one that does both skull damage and spell damage. I wish it was every single time, would make things a lot easier, but we do have it this week, so it should be pretty easy. As far as the order, you pretty much just do it on rarity order, with that one new troop being the highest priority at the highest rarity, and then just going down the rarities from there, and you should pretty much be good to go. As far as the restriction, as I mentioned, it is Drifting Sands. A lot of things here do have 20% this week, and all of them have 10%, so should make this event quite a bit easier, having both the really good metal while also having 10 to 20% extra stats on essentially every single troop that you will be using, except for maybe your hero class, depending on what you set. So overall, should be a pretty straightforward event week. If you need something cheap, the Sand Runner at only ultra rare has 75% mana start and gets a lot of damage for his mana cost, especially given that his first cast costs, what, 4 mana, 3 mana, something ridiculously small. I think it's 3 mana actually. So super ridiculously quick to end up getting that rolling and be good to go. But overall, should be a pretty straightforward event. Just kind of really spammy with a bunch of casts, and they end up doing a lot of damage because of all the extra spell damage. And obviously, you could go into Beatrix infinite loop and stuff like that. She can loop with herself. It's not truly infinite like a truffle can, but it's loopy enough that it just should be fine for completing an event like this. Anyways, as far as other stuff that we got going on this week, we can't currently see it here, but this Wednesday we will be getting the 2021 Easter pet. Of course, last Saturday we ended up getting the 2020 Easter pet, the little bunny thing. This time around we're getting some kind of monster egg thing. This Tuesday we have the faction for that one really hard one. I can never get it. Duergaroth or something. That's the faction for Tuesday. Wednesday, as I mentioned, is the Easter pet. Thursday we have Dervish hero class. Overall, pretty bad hero class. I don't really foresee it really being usable in many instances. If I'm not mistaken, it's the highest dodge in the game. I believe that's that hero class. But overall, it's not really that usable, and it's pretty much never used compared to the other options. And this Friday, we got two really big things happening. We're getting a mythic that's rather interesting. It's really RNG based, but has potential to be a good frontline tank that does a lot of things. And we're also getting a new faction, which will be bringing in a new mechanic that does it based on the most of a color on an enemy team or your own team. We're still not sure exactly how that will work, but we'll find out Friday. It seems okay, depending on how it interacts. But overall, the Mythic will probably be a bit more interesting as far as its usefulness compared to the 4 troops. But if nothing else, we'll have a faction to go to. We'll have a new weapon with it and all that. So, got a lot to do this Friday, that is for sure. Anyways, as far as Soulforge, as far as troops, nothing really too good this week. As far as troops, there are Sacroacs. I personally don't advise getting mana accumulating mythics, just because there's so many low rarity things that can accumulate well but don't do good damage, so you generally want to prioritize high damage mythics. But this is a mana accumulating mythic. It's kind of like all the trolls that have 12 mana cost, except he has 25 but gets to do it for absolutely any color. That might seem like way too high of an increase, but he does have the potential to infinite loop. It's not a flawless infinite loop like Truffle, but it definitely has a lot of potential, and also has a life gain. So if you have a life boost ratio on your team that ends up synergizing with it, you can end up getting a lot of value, particularly with something like Ketris or, really anything that has a HP boost ratio. You can end up utilizing with. Overall, not the worst mythic in the game, but I feel like it's very situational and definitely one that you'd want to get later down the line. But if you're going to craft everything, it does seem like the strongest. Another option is potentially Scorpius. Scorpius has fallen off quite a bit since he was in the past. However, he is still a double kill if the enemy has no immune to poisons on the entire team. So he gets to double kill and then double kill again, as long as they're poisoned. This obviously requires them to be able to be poisoned, otherwise he doesn't really get that much value. There are still instances where he is very strong and very quick. However, he's falling off the meta a little bit compared to other options, but still usable. Anyways, aside from that, there's one really noteworthy weapon this week, and that is, of course, Doomed Axe. Doomed Axe being one of the best 6 Doom weapons of that category that does full AoE damage, that then converts all the color into Doom Skulls. Very strong weapon, highly advised. It's about mid-range as far as the 6 different colors, but it's definitely worth considering if you have the resources to craft. If you're looking for something a little bit cheaper that might still help you out this week, you could potentially go for the Drifting Sands weapon. This can be synergized with the Drifting Sands event, since you'll be restricted to just Drifting Sands only, and ends up creating a bunch of yellow and brown based on Drifting Sands allies. Beyond this week, it won't really be that useful, but if you're looking for something to kind of help you out in the world event, it could be okay. But overall, if you're going to craft anything, Doomed Axe is definitely the priority, with most of the other options mostly just being for completionist sake if you're going to bother getting them or not. But Doomed Axe definitely the main good thing if you're looking to craft a decent weapon. Anyways, aside from that, let's go and start getting into all the teams. So we'll start from the top. As far as the very first one over here, got the first world event team, which we kind of already saw. It was the anything in first slot followed by triple Beatrix. I mostly just put that there. There are a few other weapons. I didn't want to show a really hard to obtain one, or one of the money ones like you'd end up using like the Santa Time or something to heal. But overall, it pretty much doesn't matter what you use there as long as you're not blocking Beatrix. The main premise is hero will tank for your Beatrixes, and then Beatrixes kill. You could theoretically even go for Beatrix if you want. The main reason for hero is mostly to make sure when you get to their later areas where it's almost going to one-shot you, you'll have barrier and skull reduction in order to not die, because you're not really going to be casting this weapon. You're more so just spamming Beatrix, and this is just here to make sure your Beatrixes do not die to skulls, essentially. And same premise here, except you do it with the Sting wand, and you basically do this with a bunch of speedrunners. Speedrunners only an ultra rare, so it should be pretty easy to get. Within like 10-20 event keys, you should be able to get 3 speedrunners most likely, and just get it fully traded. He has 75% mana start, and it gets a lot of damage out very quickly, especially with the spell medals that we're going to have this week, which will end up assisting it quite a bit. So it should be pretty straightforward, regardless of going higher rarity or lower rarity. Oh, and as I mentioned earlier, but just to mention again, Beatrix is obtained, of course, from the, not from event keys, but specifically from the Deep Hive throwing shards at the portal, so do be wary of that. Anyways, as far as the event, it is a brown, purple restriction, so for the lower level range, you can run with Gargoyles, you can run with Leprechaun to go feed mana to whatever you want to use as damage source. You can do the Guards, Avatar, Circuit, and Hadley team, which is what we have here. Whatever works for you ends up working. Gargoyle being the cheapest thing that you can end up doing. Gargoyle is obtained from Hall of Guardians portal in the Underworld. And next one, we have the slightly cheaper version of the Iron Gut team. So, of course, Iron Gut being a little bit hard to obtain, but definitely something that is advised to do for faction completion. But basically, a Mountain Crusher to High King Iron Gut combo, using Curse Effigy instead of a different curse option. There are a few others that you could use, but Curse Effigy is the cheapest you can get away with, where he ends up cursing a bunch of the enemy team and does so for only 11 mana costs. And then you just use Leprechaun to get everything rolling as you normally would. And it doesn't matter that you minus green because you already have a +1 green, and he doesn't really need a 4/3 is perfectly fine. So that ends up working out pretty well. It would go for the entirety of the faction. As far as when you do pure faction, your main premise is kill it with true damage over and over and over again. True damage is the main way that you're going to win off the legends. You could even put more of it onto your team if you really want to. However, this one runs specifically with one golem, which is obviously your tank, with a bunch of defense there, as well as the capability of gaining a bunch of barrier and life, making it super hard to kill. You then go and have this thing, which you can use for mana accumulations. Alternatively, you could go for a third legend, and then you basically just have the legends in order to spam them down like crazy, and you'll pretty much be good to go. That is the premise, and overall, not the hardest faction, not the easiest, kind of mid-range. If you're throwing potions for it, it's definitely going to be a cakewalk, just because the amount of true damage that you're going to have will make it pretty easy, and this golem pretty much makes it so your team never dies, or at least assists pretty well at doing so. So it's pretty much the premise. Overall, not the worst, and definitely manageable to get it done. Also, why am I going all the way out? We still have one other thing to show, and that is the Dervish class. So this runs really similar to the cheap team for the World Lore event, except you'd most likely want to run it with a Dawnbringer and possibly Frost Mage, mostly because you get a little bit more damage burst. Obviously, you can't do this for the faction event or for the World Lore event because of the restriction. You have to use Dervish weapon. However, you are not restricted in that way on Thursday. You're restricted specifically to monsters from Drifting Sands, with your weapon being able to be whatever you want. So while the things that you can use with it are a little bit more restricted, the weapon actually has a wider range of what you can end up using. And you pretty much just roll with that. Obviously, you could just go with all Sand Runner if you truly wanted to, and win entirely off of Sand Runner. He's really good for a quick burst due to his 75% mana start. You pretty much just take 1 or 2 browns, they're all filled, and then you just go crazy from there. Or in this case, 2 browns, because you're blocked on yellow going into Dawnbringer. But anyways, guys, that will wrap it up for now. If you guys have any other questions, definitely feel free to leave it in the comment section below. We will, of course, be going and streaming all of the campaign tasks tonight, as we do every single night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, streaming Gems of War. And we'll be going over all the tasks, completing them out, and going from there. Anyway, guys, if you have any other questions, feel free to leave it in the comment section below. Thank you all so much for watching. All of the teams shown in this video are also in the description below if you want to copy-paste any of them. And I'll catch you guys later. Have a wonderful week, and have a wonderful Easter later this weekend. Goodbye, everyone, and thanks for watching.